Among 63 occupation categories, only 24 professions hire relatively equivalent amount of male and female workers. Inequality also exists in occupational levels, geographic locations, and vocational trainings. As we all know, 2015, 20 years after Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, is now a crucial time for gender equality. 20 years later, there are still a lot of obstacles and challenges for women's career. Gender equality cannot be achieved at a single leap, and it cannot be done by any single department. The Chinese government would like to continue taking different approaches and cooperating with all nations in the world to create equal working environment for women. I thank you very much for listening.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your presentation and giving the view of what's happening in China. It is very interesting. It looks like we have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. If we have a couple of questions from the delegates, distinguished delegates, any questions we have for the speakers today? Over to you, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask everybody around the table about something that has been troubling me. We talk about empowering women and trying to bridge the gap at work so that women are, for example, represented in, for example, boards of directors. What do you feel about parity laws that ensure that a minimum of, for example, 50% of a board of directors has to be comprised of women? Because in my country, in Australia, right now, there's a very intense debate about this issue, and there are some people that argue that it is a useful way of ensuring that women are represented, whereas some people consider that positive discrimination is, at the end of the day, discrimination, and that's bad. So I would like to hear your opinion on this topic.
I find it very interesting as well. I've heard about this quota system. I believe that it could be an important factor to initiate something in several countries, especially when the chauvinist culture is very strong. But at the same time, this should have to be controlled at a certain point, because like this report that I was mentioning about this network of women in Brazil, it's working because these women are changing the mentality of women and men inside the companies that they work, and this is what's making work. So, for example, I only can quote two examples, like Coca-Cola and Nestle. So they hire these women, and these women are making so much difference that they want to employ more women because it's working for them. So I think the network is very important. So women empowering other women, finding way together to change the culture and see in companies like that men also would prefer to have these women as leaders. But I agree, it's a question, that imposed maybe in some countries where we still didn't get there. Women are not in this position yet. So in Brazil and South America, women has increased their power in many companies, about 5 to 7% in the last 10 years, which is good, but we know some countries are not there yet, so I think it would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Any other views or questions? Yes, over to you.
Yes, answering your question, and Yes, it applies to Japan as well. There's only 3% of seats on the board of directors at Japanese biggest companies. As you know, there are a lot of global Japanese companies, but very few women in the management. Whether you're answering your question, whether allocation is a good idea, I think it is a good idea, but 50% for Japan sounds just too high. In theory, 50% may be right, but I think it's got to be a very long-term goal for some countries like Japan to achieve 50%. But the reason is because there aren't many people higher up. So a lot of women work part-time and very far from executive position. So all of a sudden, if companies are told you need 50% of executives, there's no one in between executives and the current women workers. So I think it has to be a long term. Make sure there's child caring facilities so that women can go to work. Yes, so I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think we are running out of time. The Assembly concludes this thematic debate. The members of the General Assembly listen to the reports today. Will also recall the meeting of the General Assembly of the 29th October 2014. Members also recall that under agenda number 28 of the General Assembly held a specific meeting on the development of gender equality on the 23rd February 2015. The General Assembly will take action on draft decision on E/65/258 resolution on participating of civil society in advancement of women at the 69th General Assembly session. I may take that the General Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution E/65/258. It is so decided, and it concludes our plenary meeting of the General Assembly.